Quote, "Not where you come from shall constitute your honour from now on, but instead where you are going." Unquote. That's from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Welcome, esteemed listeners, and welcome to this extra little episode that I've decided to tag on to the end of the series. The series proper ended with the 3-part exposition of Will to Power, but I wanted to just have a brief conversation about what comes next. And so there's a few things I'd like to share with you. Firstly, just a brief look back on Series 1 to take stock of where we are now and how far we've come. I look forward to my book coming in 2026. It's called Nietzsche, Sex, Power, a Manifesto for Ascending Life. And I wanted to share a few words on the future of the Will to Joy podcast and perhaps get some of your views. And then as a parting shot, I'm going to furnish you with a simple but an enlightening practice that will help you understand yourself better as a prelude to willed change. But first, my sincere thanks to a few people who've recently joined my Patreon as De Profundis members. They are Michael Page, Ivan, Material Mind, Michael, Jack, William Mark Thompson, and Jason Nash. You folks are making this project possible, and for that, you have my undying gratitude. So thank you so much. So why the Will to Joy podcast? Why now? Well, as you know, if you've listened to all the episodes, I've been working on this project for years, since 2017, and I just felt it was time to get something out there this year. And for me, it's been a real learning experience. I didn't really have any fixed plan when I started, other than to explore Nietzsche's philosophy, and in particular, from the perspective of the human condition, our desires, aspirations, our frustrations, our self-doubt and our self-sabotaging, the social forces of shame, guilt and excessive self-consciousness to the point of pathology, and of course that everyday nihilism that is expressed in the question, what is the significance of my existence? I think I've managed to touch on all these important topics, but there's a great deal that I've not touched on, and in some ways, the Will to Joy podcasts, 29 episodes, is a mere introduction to the strange world of Friedrich Nietzsche. We've barely scratched the surface. I think there's so much more to share. And the process has been a kind of stretching of the limbs for me. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted this journey to go, but my faith in this project has only increased with every episode, such that I'm really confident in my exposition of, for example, the Will to Power that I provided at the conclusion of the season. And I'm pretty happy with that 3-part finale. A fitting climax, I think, to our journey, the journey we've shared together. And rather than just sharing with you the accepted consensus on Nietzsche's philosophy, some of the material I've shared with you constitutes original and innovative interpretations of the man's thought. Notably, obviously, the theory of Will to Power, that's my own, and I stand by it as a very credible account based on Nietzsche's texts. And also my material in the Economy of Bodies episode, which I presented at the Friedrich Nietzsche conference in Belfast in September. And that one was dealing with culture, beauty and sex, an area of Nietzschean philosophy that generally doesn't receive a great deal of attention, despite its enormous fundamental significance for human life and for the continuity of our species. Not to say I haven't depended on the excellent work of other researchers in my own work. No man is an island in the end, not even Nietzsche. And in particular, I want to credit T.K. Seung as the originator of the idea of Nietzschean consciousness in its cosmic and heroic perspectives. He prefers the terms Faustian and Spinozan, but his 2006 book, Nietzsche's Epic of the Soul, is where we first encounter this notion of the cosmic and heroic perspectives. And so I want to credit him for that, as I admitted it in the last show. Incidentally, I really recommend that book as well. It's really excellent. But aside from particular theories, my focus on the practical and actionable is an approach largely neglected in Nietzsche scholarship. This is both because such things do not fall within the remit of academics, and also because the personal growth community do not tend to have the in-depth knowledge required to use Nietzsche's philosophy for personal development. And so this, I think, is my unique offer. And because I've only begun to make this material public this year, if you are listening to this, you are getting in at the start of something, and you've got a chance to be an early adopter. My thinking has changed, it's improved in the 10 months I've been putting this out there, and I've been feeling my way along, and so my strategy of test and adjust may have been obvious. For instance, and most notably in the change of the podcast name from Becoming Übermensch to Will to Joy. And I can't promise that there won't be more changes in the future because, hey, everything's becoming, right? So I don't think there's a podcast quite like Will to Joy out there, and I have looked intensely. But I'm more interested in what you think. And so I invite you to share your thoughts. Would you like a season 2 of Will to Joy? Are there any topics you would like me to cover in it? Would you like an ad hoc Q&A show, perhaps in the interim before a season 2? You can message the show directly from the show description in each episode, and it really does excite me to hear your views and your feedback. And you can also follow me on X, Instagram, Facebook, and contribute your views there. Obviously, Patreon is going to be my main focus for the coming winter months, and I'll talk about that a little later. That and my book, of course. Ah yes, the book. So as you know, I've been writing for 8 years, and I thought at the start of the project that I could capture everything in one book. That is possible, but it would involve quite a bit of compression, and I think we might sacrifice a lot of clarity in doing that, and I'd have to assume a lot more grounding in my readers, which is something I want to avoid. So it's a bigger project, but that's okay because it addresses itself to the most important human concerns. I have the skeleton assembled for my first book coming early in 2026, and it's underpinned by a huge amount of work that I've carried out over the years. And as I've said already, the book is going to be called Nietzsche, Sex, Power, a Manifesto of Ascending Life. Because this is more than a manual for self-mastery. It's a radical manifesto for a new spiritual orientation in a disenchanted age. So that's my working title, Nietzsche, Sex, Power. It could change, of course. Everything can change. But I think it's unlikely to. If you've listened to episode 24 of the podcast, An Economy of Bodies, you'll grasp the thinking that this book entails. Of course, it's going to be much more practical and actionable and expansive than that brief academic presentation. It's a book about the marriage of aesthetics and power, and how this duality is the real evaluative basis of life. As Nietzsche writes in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, on the tarantulas, quote, struggle and inequality and war for power and supremacy are found even in beauty, unquote. So let me give you an overview. Fusing Nietzsche's enigmatic philosophy with evolutionary psychology and behavioral science, my book offers a provocative and intellectually serious alternative to the moralistic, therapeutic, and productivity-obsessed world of contemporary self-help. It confronts the quiet misery of modernity, a world where science has stripped the cosmos of meaning, where relativism has flattened values, and where our most fundamental instincts, desire, ambition, and pride, are pathologized and proclaimed indecent. Of course, you won't be surprised to hear that it challenges our culture's most cherished illusions: altruism, equality, free will. These are fictions that the aspiring individual must outgrow to reclaim dignity, power, and joy. At the heart of the book is my interpretation of Nietzsche's will to power, not as brute domination, but as the fundamental principle woven into the fabric of existence itself. The drive to grow, to overcome, to intensify, to become more. This force is expressed in two ancient drives of exceptional potency. Eros, the sexual drive concerned with attraction, sensuality, and reproduction, and animus, the aggressive drive to compete, prevail, and overcome. Though taboo in polite society, these impulses shape our culture, our social hierarchies, and they determine each person's life chances. When understood and harnessed, they become the engines of personal transformation. This is not a book about healing, coping, or acceptance. It's about transcending, overcoming oneself, tearing up inherited scripts, and turning a humdrum life into an artistic masterpiece. It challenges the supremacy of our rational and moral values and reclaims aesthetic ones: beauty, strength, intensity, and joy. It teaches that suffering can be made sacred, that the price of greatness is high, but that it's worth it. The book culminates in the invitation to come face to face with Nietzsche's guiding spirit, Dionysus, the god of dance, madness, and ecstasy. To look into his eyes is to peer into the abyss even as it peers into you. Those intrepid enough to do so will be changed. Since Nietzsche's death in 1900, there's never been a time when his name has not resounded through Western thought. But today, interest in his strange, dangerous philosophy is deeper and more widespread than ever. It's high time for a more consequential interpretation of Nietzschean thought. That time is now, and this is that interpretation. So, who is this book for? Well, if you're an intellectual dissident, an apolitical revolutionary, a spiritual contrarian, a firebrand freethinker, a cultural mutant, or a vitalist, or a biophiliac, or an autodidact seeking a spiritual path grounded in immediate, verifiable experience and free of dogma and supernaturalisms, it's for you. It's for women and men frustrated with mainstream personal growth and looking for something radical, practical, and intellectually serious that wrestles with the real problems of human flourishing. It's a book for anyone who feels the spark within being smothered by the tedious vacuousness of life in early 21st century capitalist, consumerist, secular humanism. So let me give you an outline of the chapters. First of all, the introduction, Eros and Animus. This will introduce the core themes of the book, Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, love of one's fate, the will to power, and the foundational drives of Eros and Animus. It will diagnose modern nihilism and reposition Nietzsche as a pioneer of self-transformation and evolutionary insight. Then in Chapter 1, The Appraising Animal, we'll explore humans as inherently valuing creatures, focused on aesthetic judgment and sexual selection. It will introduce beauty as a core power trait and rausch, intoxication, as the emotional response of life-ascending values. In Chapter 2, The Evolution of Intoxication, we'll trace the evolutionary genesis of aesthetic taste and sexual attraction. We'll see how the taste for beauty and associated power traits evolved as a barometer for identifying reproductive quality, grounding Nietzsche's idea of life ascending in biology. In Chapter 3, An Economy of Bodies, we'll frame human social and romantic life as a clandestine economy structured around mutual appraisals of power traits. The chapter proposes that most relationships are unconsciously transactional, based on mutual appraisal of reproductive and social fitness. Chapter 4 is called A Different Kind of Invisible Hand. It will examine market-like dynamics in the social world, scarcity, volatility, manipulation, etc. It will introduce the idea of predators, the fluctuating nature of value, and the strategic nature of human interactions. Chapter 5 is called The World as It Oughtn't to Be. Chapter 5 challenges sentimental views of altruism, using Nietzsche's genealogy of morality. It recasts love and empathy as evolved strategies whilst affirming their emotional reality and incomparable worth as life-affirming forces. So yes, love is affirmed as something beautiful and life-affirming in this book. If this book is cynical, it is only so in the ancient sense of the cynic school, unsparing honesty about the human's natural instincts. Chapter 6 is called The One True Superpower, and in many ways it's the practical heart of the book. It presents self-confidence as the most potent power trait in the social hierarchy. It shows how self-valuation affects external valuation, and it explores confidence as the physio-psychological force of will to power. The chapter explores how social evaluation seeps into the psyche, influencing not only our valuations of others, but also our valuations of ourselves. In a world of volatile social value, uncertainty can be a threat, but for those who can master themselves, it also presents an opportunity. In the human dominance hierarchy, radical social mobility is possible. As earlier chapters will have demonstrated, evaluations of worth are inherently unstable. Because people lack confidence in judging their own value, they turn to others for feedback. In this unforgiving social economy, consensus becomes a mirror in which you catch glimpses of yourself. Your self-worth is effectively outsourced, dependent on the subtle signs of approval or disapproval you learn to detect in others. These signals are rarely explicit. You read your value in glances, gestures, tones. Are you greeted with warmth, deference, apprehension, hostility, or indifference? Do they notice you at all? But there's a twist. Like you, those same people lack confidence in their own judgments and are constantly seeking external cues to confirm them. This means they are also scanning you for signs of how you value yourself. In other words, your self-confidence directly influences other people's valuations of you. This creates a paradox. If your self-esteem depends on the good opinion of others, it will always be compromised. Dependency itself signals low value. But if you cultivate unshakable belief in your own value, others will tend to follow suit. All else being equal, the less you care about what people think of you, the more likely they are to admire you. The more you care about what people think of you, the less they will. Confidence is not just a power trait, it's potentially a superpower. The real thing is unmistakable. We are all exquisitely attuned to its presence in others. It can override market logic entirely, allowing someone seemingly without high levels of other power traits to command unexpected influence and high social status. Confidence is both the foundation and the consequence of every other power trait. Exercises in this chapter focus on identifying where your self-appraisal is dependent on others and developing practices for cultivating radical independence of self-evaluation. Chapter 7 is called On Self-Overcoming. This introduces Nietzsche's drive psychology, which explains the difficulty of self-control. It offers rituals and practices for training the self and integrating the psyche to give life direction. It links self-mastery with ancient ideals of excellence that involve consecrating conflict, competition, and personal adversity. Chapter 8 is called The Social Straitjacket, and this traces the rise of civilization, its repression of primal drives, the domestication of the human animal, and the cultivation of slave psychology. It explains how instincts were sublimated into culture, art, and religion, making society a managed expression of the underlying forces of eros and animus. Chapter 9 is called Herd. It describes civilization as a superorganism with its own will to power. It argues that conformity serves societal cohesion for the benefit of this entity alone. It explains that exceptional individuals act as evolutionary mutants who push culture forward, enabling civilizations to adapt and evolve. Chapter 10 is called Because We Must. It explores how radical individuality emerges. It introduces the bellwether archetype, the one who others tend to follow, and the idea of the internal locus of authority. It offers spiritual and existential reframing of will to power as the essence of being. The final chapter, chapter 11, is called Spirituality Without Spirits, and it concludes the book by articulating a Dionysian spirituality grounded in necessity, joy, and life ascending. It reclaims tragic consciousness as sacred and positions joy as the highest expression of power. It returns the reader to the question of affirming life and understanding one's destiny as absolutely necessary and as infinitely significant. This book strips everything back to the basics, the body, the instincts, the drives. You'll learn how eros and animus shape your confidence, your ambition, your relationships, your self-image and your sense of purpose, even your sense of your life's meaning. And instead of pretending these forces don't exist, you'll learn how to harness them. This is a book about taking control of the machinery driving you from below. You'll learn why beauty hits like a drug, why status matters more than people admit, why you compare yourself constantly, and how these instincts can be trained, economized, and redirected to build a life you actually want, not a life you just put up with. The book exposes the hidden economy of bodies we all live inside. The ranking, the signalling, the jostling, the constant evaluations. But the aim isn't cynicism, it's freedom. Once you understand the game, you can finally stop being played by it. You'll see how civilization has boxed you in, how your instincts were domesticated, how conformity was drilled into you, and you'll learn how to reverse that without blowing up your life or retreating into the wilderness. This is about becoming someone who can function in modern society while no longer being defined by it. And then it goes further, into the psychology of the crowd, the emergence of rare individuals who lead it, and what it actually takes to become one of them. Not by pretending to be an alpha, not by parroting cliches, but by cultivating an internal locus of authority that others detect immediately. Across the chapters, you'll be equipped with a toolkit for life, how to audit your own power traits with brutal honesty, how to read other people instantly and accurately, how to develop confidence that isn't fake, fragile or performative, how to stop outsourcing your sense of self-worth to the herd's evaluations, how to reshape habits, drives and behaviours through self-overcoming, how to build an internal centre of authority that doesn't wobble every time someone frowns at you, how to use suffering rather than fearing it, how to honour it, how to stop living reactively and start living actively as a first movement, a self-propelled wheel, a creative yes. The practical reward from all this? Well, you'll become someone for whom people feel an instinctive respect, whilst ironically you care less and less whether anyone respects you or not. You'll become someone who doesn't cling, someone open to uncertainty and adventure, someone who can risk it all on the flip of a coin to win the world, someone who grows stronger from setbacks rather than being shattered by them, who feels their life enriched by adversities, someone who's cultivated a ravenous appetite for beauty and the sensual as transformative, even epiphanic experiences, someone for whom the world is unveiled as a realm of incalculable mystery and sacredness, someone who, in the most existential sense, affirms existence, someone who feels, maybe for the first time, that their life is consequential, significant, real. Quote, in the horizon of the infinite, we have left the land and have gone aboard ship. We have broken down the bridge behind us. Nay, more, the land behind us. Well, little ship, look out. Beside you is the ocean. It's true it does not always roar, and sometimes it spreads out like silk and gold and gentle reverie. But times will come when you will feel that it is infinite, and that there is nothing more frightful than infinity. Alas, if homesickness for the land should attack you, as if there had been more freedom there, and there is no land any longer. Unquote. Slightly abridged there. That's Gay Science 124. So we've talked a bit about where I'm going, but the real question is, where are you going? I'm looking for people who want to take part in this project. Experimenters, adventurers, iconoclasts, anyone willing to test themselves. So if that's you, you can stay connected with Will to Joy and with me and Nietzsche for Life through all the usual channels. But I'm also looking for those who want to help bring this work fully into the world. And the most direct way is to join me as a De Profundis member on Patreon at patreon.com/Will to Joy. And there's also a link in the description. For me, well, I quit my job 2 years ago to pursue this full time. I think it's fair to say that I committed wholly, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say I've broken the bridge behind me. Yes, I've burned my boats, and naturally I've burned through all my savings as well. And I'm not crying the poor tale here. I'm not stopping. I'm not waiting. Regardless of material challenges, one way or another, by hook or by crook, this work will be realised. It's just something that has to happen. But you can help it come into existence by supporting me as a De Profundis member on Patreon. And I intend to make it worth your while. You'll get detailed instructions for Nietzschean practices and exercises. You'll get early access to new personal growth techniques from Nietzsche, sex, power, and your feedback can even shape the book. I'll share my own audio diaries of experiments and exercises, and you'll get early drafts and excerpts from Nietzsche, sex, power too, long before publication. And also, for those who join me in 2025, your names will appear in the book as an acknowledgement of your support. So I'm planning that there's going to be something exclusive for Patreon members every month, and there'll be other privileges as well as time goes on. If that speaks to you, join me. As I've said elsewhere, this is a campaign against ordinariness, against joylessness. 2026 is going to be tumultuous and exciting. I can feel it. Can you? If you can't support me materially, that's fine. You can still help this movement grow by liking, sharing, reviewing, subscribing, or even sending me a message, which you can do directly from the podcast, the episode descriptions. The best comments I will pin on the website. I leave you with a practical exercise you may wish to toy with. It's compact, ruthless, and exposes the gap between what someone claims to value and what their behaviour actually reveals about their values. To quote Nietzsche, quote, "One thing is needful, to give style to one's character, a great and uncommon art. It is practised by the man who surveys all the strengths and weaknesses that his nature affords and then incorporates them into an artistic plan, until everything appears to be the result of art and reason, and even weaknesses enchant the eye. Here a great deal of second nature has been added, while there a piece of first nature has been removed, both times through long practice and daily effort." Unquote. So I'm going to call this exercise Real Values. Step 1. Declare your values. Spend 10 minutes or so writing down the 5 values you believe define you, and then rank them 1 to 5 in order of importance. For each one, write down a sentence about why you think you hold it. Keep it honest, but don't overthink. These are your professed values, your stated values. Step 2. Observe your behaviour for 7 days. Each day, keep a short log, bullet points are fine, and consider, what did you actually spend time on? What did you avoid? What triggered your enthusiasm, irritation, or dread? Where did your money go? Who did you defer to? What did you pursue when nobody was watching? In particular, carefully note your inner dialogue, your deliberations. It's especially important to capture the high moments and the low moments. When did you feel self-satisfied, elated, fulfilled? When did you feel compromised, disappointed in yourself, ashamed. After 7 days, extract the patterns and tendencies from your behaviour and feelings. These reveal your expressed values, the things your behaviour is organised around, whether you admit it or not. Step 3. Identify your real values. From the behavioural patterns, write down the 5 values your actions imply. Things like comfort, status, novelty, security, control, dominance, stimulation, so on and so forth. And then rank these 5 in order of actual importance, using only evidence from your week. Step 4. Compare the 2 lists. Lay the 2 sets of values side by side. Ask brutally simple questions. Which stated values appear nowhere in your actions? Which revealed values never made it onto your noble list? Where do your priorities flip entirely? What values do you secretly serve that you don't publicly acknowledge? This is where people usually discover that health loses out to convenience, honesty loses out to approval, and learning loses to entertainment, and so on. Step 5. Final analysis. Write a short paragraph on the disparities. What values do you pretend to have? What values do you actually operate by? What does this say about the forces really driving you? So what are your stated values really? Are they aspirations? Are they values you like to see in other people? Or are they values you think you should have based on your culture, upbringing, and social conditioning? Don't moralise it. Be scrupulously honest. You needn't share your conclusions with anybody. Just state the facts of the patterns in your behaviour. This exercise is simple, but it cuts deep. Your behaviour is your philosophy. Your week will tell you more about your values than your self-concept or any attempt to explain your values consciously ever will. So another quote from Nietzsche, from Beyond Good and Evil 41. Quote, "One must test oneself to see whether one is destined for independence and command, and one must do so at the proper time. One should not avoid one's tests, although they are perhaps the most dangerous game one could play, and are, in the end, tests which are taken before ourselves and before no other judge." Unquote. And with that, esteemed listeners, the Will to Joy show takes its bow for now. I wish you strength in your ascent, wherever it leads, and who knows, maybe one clear morning, perhaps our paths will cross on the steep slopes of a formidable mountain, both of us striving and making progress towards the summit.